I built my property portfolio to over $15 million before the age of 26. And in this video, I'm gonna break down exactly how I would get to $15 million if I was starting again today with $300,000 of cash and no properties to my name. And I would do it with a 15-year holding window, and I would get to that window as fast as I could. Now let's jump into it. The two definite things that we have is we have 15 years as our time frame, and we need to get from $0 in property to a $15 million gross asset base. A lot of people that I speak to on a daily basis often think that when you say something like scale your property from 0 to 15 million within 15 years, it means that you have to go buy $15 million worth of real estate, which in actual fact is not actually the case. So I'm going to show you how much property we would actually need to buy to then get to 15 million, and it's actually about a third of that number, because as we have real estate that's in the marketplace, that real estate becomes more and more valuable over time, which obviously grows us to our $15 million portfolio. Now, we obviously have 15 years, and I'm also assuming that we are starting with some sort of capital. Now, that is a rite of passage. If you want to get into real estate, you need money to be able to start, and I will do another video on how I would actually get the funds if I wanted to start in real estate today, and there are many ways to do it. There are parental guarantees, there are savings, there is obviously using capital from somewhere that you may have sold a business or sold something. There's many ways, but you need some cash, all right? That's gonna be the thing that you need to be able to do this. And we're gonna start with $300,000 of cash. Now, the other thing we need is we need income. All right, we need income. Without income, you can't borrow money from the banks. And to build a $15 million property portfolio, you need enough income to get around about $4 to $5 million in debt. Now, to get $4 to $5 million in debt at the current interest rates, most banks will lend you about 5 to 6 times your income in debt. We call that a debt to income ratio. Now, on top of your own income, you also have the rental income that the properties are going to produce. So to get $4 to $5 million worth of debt, eventually, not straight away, but eventually, we are gonna need an income of about $500,000. This can come from an individual, this can come from a business's profit, this can come from 2 people earning $250,000 each, or this can come from 2 people earning $400,000 and $100,000, or this could come from 3 people earning $150,000 each, okay? So it can come from many different places, but we need income of $500,000, and we need 15 years of growth at 7% per annum. Now, 7% per annum is the long-term growth rate in the Australian property market, and we are going to make an assumption that over the next 15 years, the property market is also going to grow at 7% per annum. It's not going to grow at 7% every single year, because that is just not reality. But this year it might grow at 20%, next year it might grow at 2%, the year after that it might grow at 18%, and the year after that it might grow at 6%. You get the point. The long-term average is 7%. So these are the 3 things that we need. We need $300,000 in cash, we need $500,000 of income, and we need 15 years at 7% per annum in growth. So let's move to step number 1 with all of these things. House number 1. Now, this property is going to be worth $1 million. That's what we're gonna spend. Now, of that 1 million, we're gonna get 800,000 from the bank. And remember, I said that we needed 300,000 of cash to start. Well, we're gonna use 200,000 of that as our deposit, and we're gonna use 50,000 of that as stamp duty and cost. So of our 300, we now have 50K left. Okay, so let me walk you through it one more time. First step, buy our first asset. We're gonna use 250,000 of our $300,000 for our $200,000 deposit, $50,000 for stamp duty, $800,000 from the bank, which is going to get us a $1 million asset. And we're gonna have 50K left over. All right, so we got $1 million asset. Here it is. We bought a house. It's worth $1 million, like I said, $1 million. And reminder again, 800K in debt. Now, what we're gonna do with our little 50 schmacks we have over here is we're gonna use that $50,000 to go and get a DA approval to build a second dwelling on our first dwelling, which is a granny flat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a little house here, and then we're gonna of a little house like that. So we're going to use our 50 grand to go and get a DA approval. It probably won't cost 50 grand, but I'm going to assume it is going to cost us $50,000. And at the end of the DA approval, we're going to have a house and a DA approved granny flat, okay? And we're going to have zilch cash left. Now, what we then do, my friends, we have our house with a DA approval and we go back to the bank. That's the bank right there. And we say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Bank Manager, I now have a house that has a DA approval to build a second dwelling on it. Can you please tell me how much money you would lend me to build my little granny flat on the back of my house? And the bank's going to say, yeah, absolutely. So when that's finished, that's going to be worth $1.4 million and we will lend you 80% of that $1.4 million. Now, if I do some quick maths, 80% of $1.4 million works out to be around about 1.12 million. Is that right?
Sure.
1.12, I fucking told you it was 1.12, you doubted me. $1.12 million. And I'm like, fuck yeah, 1.12 million. But we have to build the granny flat, right? And the granny flat is gonna cost us about 250 schmacks to build. So we've got 1.12 the bank will lend us. We've got an $800,000 existing debt on this property, and it's gonna cost us 250 to build. So we need to borrow 250 to build. That will then take our total position to $1,050,000 once this is complete, which then leaves us with $70,000 of available equity, of which we will also refinance out, which means we then have $70,000 in cash sitting in our offset account. We now have a house and a granny flat that's built. It's worth $1.4 million, which I didn't write down, which is here. There's lots of numbers on this board. $1.4 million, and we now have $1.12 million worth of debt. The house and granny flat is now worth, remember what I said before, 1.4 mil. We have 1.12 mil of debt. We have 70,000 of cash sitting in our offset account, which we've refinanced back out after we finished it. And this is now renting for probably $1,500 a week. So this should be paying for itself. If we had an interest rate of 6% on 1.12 million, we're probably paying around about 65 to 70 grand in interest, and we're getting $1,500 a week in rent, which gives us $75,000 a year, or close enough to, plus our expenses. So this property is now very much paying for itself. Now, we're gonna sit and wait. This property number one, we're gonna sit and wait. After 12 months, if this property at $1.4 million grows at 7%, that's gonna give us another $98,000. So 12 months on, we now have a property that is worth $1.498 million. So we can refinance out $78,000 from this to then join up with this, which means we now have 148K of cash and equity, which will buy us our next property. We now have 148K to buy our next property. So what I'm gonna do is I'm now gonna go and buy another $1 million asset, and we don't have enough cash here to put down a 20% deposit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put down a 10% deposit, so 100 G's. We're gonna take on 900 grand from the bank, and with the other 48,000, that's gonna pay for stamp duty and lender's mortgage insurance. So we are left with zero capital. We're still obviously earning money from our job and all the rest of it, because like I said, we need to have the ability to earn an income of up to $500,000. So now we have two properties, one, two. Property one is worth 1.48 million, and property two is worth 1 million. We have 900K of debt on this one, and we have 1.198 million debt on this one. We've now got a portfolio with 2,098,000 worth of debt on it, and we have a portfolio that is worth 2.48 million. Now remember, my friends, we've gotten to 2.48 million by only having, when we started, 300K worth of cash. I haven't found any more cash than that. That's the only cash we started with. All the rest of this has been debt and equity. So we started with our 300 grand worth of cash, and we need to have the ability to earn an income of up to $500,000 to get the debt. We're 2.5 million or thereabouts into our $15 million portfolio. We're not gonna do anything for 12 months, which means we now have two properties, and because we've held them for another 12 months, the two properties that we have that were worth 2.48 million are now worth 7% more than they were last year. Would you believe it? Over the last 12 months, we've sat down, we've had the 2 properties in the marketplace, we've had to pay the repayments and all the rest of it. We've made $173,600, which now, if we add that to our 2.48 million, that gives us a grand total portfolio of 600. That's what we have. And guess what? And we have total debt of $2,098,000. Now, folks, if you're watching this and you like what you're seeing here and you like my beautiful little writing like Mr. Scribble, what you should do is you should click the little subscribe button there and you should subscribe and you should watch and you should learn. All right, that's what you should do. Now back to the video, folks. We have $2,098,000 worth of debt based on our $2.653 million portfolio, which means we have some equity in there, of which we're going to use to go buy some more properties. Now, this is what's going to happen. So we've got our $2.653 million bucks. And there's 2 things we can do. We can leverage 80% of that, which is what most lenders will want you to do, leverage 80%. But if we leverage 80%, what you'll see is they'll only allow us to pull out $2.122,400,000 and then minus our existing debt of $2,098,000. You can see there is $24,000 of available equity in there, which is not enough to buy another property. Now, there's 2 things you could do. You could wait another 12 months, let that 2.653 grow and wait till you have enough equity to leverage 80%, or you can do the Jack Henderson approach and go really, really aggressive. And what we do is we go and leverage up to 90% and we are allowed to pull out $2.387,700, which then means minus our little debt that we have here of $2,098,000 gives us the ability to pull out $289,700. And that's if we pull up to 90%. You're gonna have to pay some lender's mortgage insurance. It is very aggressive, but I'm trying to show you how to get to 15 million in 15 years. We ain't here to fuck spiders, my friends. All right, so that is what we can pull out, and that is what our debt level will end up being. $2.387 million based on a $2.653 million portfolio. And what we're going to do with that, you're not going to believe it, we're going to go buy another residential asset, and we're probably going to spend $1.1 million. We're going to put down a 20% deposit, which is $220,000, and the other $69,700 is going to go to stamp duty and lender's mortgage insurance and all of those other costs. So right now, what happens is we add 1.1 million to our 2.653, and we have now a portfolio of 3.753 million with just under 2.4 million bucks in debt, and we now have 3 assets. Now, you wouldn't believe it. What we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to go, okay, well now we've got 3.753 million growing at 7%. That means over the next 12 months, our portfolio value is going to go up $262,710 plus our 3.753. We're going to have a portfolio value worth $4,015,710. And now another key thing to remember is we've only put in $300,000 of our own capital up front. We've had to put some money in to obviously cash flow all of this debt during our scaling phase, but we've still only put in $300,000 of our own cash. All the rest has been the bank's money. We now have a portfolio worth $3.753 million, and we have debt on that portfolio of $3.267,700 because we had to add the other $880,000 worth of debt from the other purchase back to this property. So you can see we are pushing very, very hard here. But as you can see here, we've only put in our original $300,000 of cash to be able to get there, and another 12 months down the track, which will take us to 42 months of holding. So if this property portfolio grows at 7% for the next 12 months, it then gets us to $4,015,000. If you then calculate 80% of the 4 million gives us 312,000. So we're sitting about an 80% loan to value ratio. So again, there's 2 choices. You could leverage up another 10% to pull out another 400 odd grand to go buy more property, or we could wait another 12 months. Now I'm going to choose to wait another 12 months because I've already paid lender's mortgage insurance on 2 of these properties. So let's wait and let the portfolio have some more growth. And that means we'll get another 12 months into the journey, which means we'll be 54 months in. The portfolio will then grow another 7% and it will grow to 4296 and 809. So that's the portfolio value times 80%. So our debt now will go to 3.437400, and we're going to pull out $169,000 worth of equity, which is going to be our last deposit on our last property. Now remember, this is the portfolio value and we're 54 months into our 15-year journey. Now, again, I'll keep it super straightforward. We're going to use this $169,000 as a 20% deposit on another $1 million asset. So now we're going to have 4 residential properties. We're going to add another $1 million asset to the piece, and we're going to use the other $69,000 again for stamp duty and costs. So if we now add another $1 million asset to this, so we've now gotten our portfolio to 5.296, and we now need to add another $800,000 worth of debt to this number. Over 4.5 years, we've acquired 4 properties. Our total debt has gotten to $4.237 million, hence the reason the need to earn 500 grand a year. Our total asset position is 5.296, so just under $5.3 million. Now, we've gone through and we've acquired $5.296 million worth of assets over a 5-year acquisition period. And now we move into this phase, which I like to call the incubation period, which is a waiting time. So over the next 15 years, we go from having this number growing at 7% per annum. We end up at the end of the 15 years with $14.61 million in assets. Now, what you can see is we didn't acquire $14.6 million in assets. We acquired $5.296 million in assets, and they then grew by over $9 million to get us those numbers over a 15-year period. Now, the faster you can acquire the assets, we acquired these assets over a 5-year acquisition. If you acquired them in 1 year or 2 years, the same rule applies. 15 years at 7%, which then gives us our $14.6 million. Now, even if we did not pay $1 of debt off, we still had, at the end of this period, I'll even round that up to $4 million. Would you be worried? I wouldn't be, because you got $4.24 million of debt, you got $14.6 million of assets. If we were to sell the assets down, pay off our $4.2 million of debt, you would still be left with $12.2 million worth of net equity. And remember, at the start, we only put in $300,000 of our own capital, and every single purchase since the first purchase, we've used the bank's money. So remember, we started with $300,000 of cash, we needed a $500,000 income, and we needed 15 years at 7% per annum. They're the 3 things that we started with, and they're the 3 things that we ended with. Now, the $300,000 of cash ended up getting us to an asset position of just over 5.2 million and $4.4 million in debt. Our $300,000 worth of cash allowed us to end up getting into $5.2 million worth of assets. Our $500,000 worth of income allowed us to get $4.4 million worth of debt. And our 15 years at 7% per annum allowed us to get to a net asset position of $14.6 million, which then allowed us to sell down those assets, pay out our $4.4 million, and end up with $12.2 million worth of capital. And $12.2 million worth of capital, if you were then investing it, getting a 6% yield on your money, allows us to then get an income of over $800,000 per annum, which would be more than the $500,000 worth of income you were working for every single day for the past 15 years. So if you found this video valuable and you want to see more of these breakdowns, even though it's very long and it's very detailed, click subscribe, click like, and comment what else you would like me to break down.